television highlights of the news of yesteryear.
Saga of the Submarine. This is man's use of the submarine as a destructive force. This, man's means of taking advantage of inventive genius that enabled him to live and travel underwater. In 1875, first experiment on a submarine was concluded by John P. Holland, shown here in historic photographs with his first practical underseas craft. Holland's initial trial was a failure. His second in 1879 was also unsuccessful. But in 1900, his ninth model was approved by experts. 14 years later, the American invention, augmented by German engineers, took to the seas to war on Allied shipping. Features of Holland's submarine, combined with developments by Simon Lake of Baltimore, were contained in Germany's U-boats. These were under the command of Alfred von Tirpitz, Lord High Admiral of the Deutschland Navy. Submarine warfare started August 6, 1914, when 10 U-boats swept the North Sea and sank every ship in sight. You are watching actual scenes showing a U-boat in action. The English ship Netmore is being shelled by the German sub, which has surfaced to complete destruction started by torpedoes. There goes the Netmore. Contrary to general belief, Great Britain had more submarines than Germany at the start of World War I, but by 1917, Kaiser Wilhelm shipyards were in full production of underseas raiders. But back to 1915 and the U-boat warfare. German officers scanned papers of a sunken ship as lookouts scout the seas. Another victim, the steamer Parkgate. This time, a surface torpedo is brought into action. A direct hit, and the Parkgate's crew takes to the lifeboats. The Parkgate was one of the 5,408 ships destroyed by U-boats from 1914 through 1918. Watch as British crew members row toward the submarine that destroyed their ship. Taken aboard as prisoners of war, the sailors are to be interned for the duration. As U-boats continue to terrorize the Atlantic waters, Britain experimented with a new type submarine. The one you see in these photographs was steam-propelled with collapsible funnels that disappeared into the superstructure when the craft submerged. This was an impractical craft, never placed in mass production. But other Allied anti-U-boat methods were more successful. Camouflage, zigzag courses in sub-infested waters, decoy ships, mine and net barriers, and most effective of all, the convoying of transports and supply ships by death-dealing, low-slung destroyers and sub-chasers. November 11th, 1918 saw end of hostilities, and November 20th saw surrender of all Germany's U-boats to the conquering Allies. The war was over, but the submarine, developed in peacetime, took its place with the airplane as a major destructive force.
Rin Tin Tin, animal idol of America. It's San Francisco in the late 1920s, and the first great dog star of the movies puts on a show for ailing tots. You're watching the canine celebrity who earned $300,000 for his master in movies like $1 Million Collar, Tiger Rose, Rinty of the Desert, and others. Was he smart? Look, bark goodbye, Rinty.
It's 1933, and Russia's 16-year campaign for recognition by the United States is climaxed by President Roosevelt's invitation to Soviet government head Michael Kalinin. Following official word from Washington, Kalinin prepares to send to America Commissar for Foreign Affairs Maxim Litvinoff. Russia's representative arrives in New York en route to the capital.
Mr. Litvinoff, Litvinoff, are you glad to be in America?
I am delighted to be in America. Yes, yes, I'm glad, yes. Yes, very glad, very glad.
Right here.
I'm delighted.
Litvinoff, active in Russian political movements since 1905 when he helped organize the revolution of that year, became Moscow's ambassador to Great Britain in 1917, but was refused recognition in London. In these pictures, he greets former associates of his World War I endeavors. And he's off to Washington for the conference with President Roosevelt, which resulted in diplomatic recognition of the Soviet Union November 16, 1933. Dean of the American Theater. It's the immortal David Belasco who developed stars like David Warfield, Francis Starr, Lenore Ulrich, and whose first production was in 1889, shown buying bonds during World War I.
Now it's 1925, and movie star Gloria Swanson is back in New York. The screen's best-dressed woman has just married the Marquis de la Falaise de la Coudray, and this was their honeymoon trip. Remember her in The Affairs of Anatole, Male and Female, Zaza, Bluebeard's Eighth Wife, or if your memory's really good, as a Mack-Sennett bathing beauty?
Early explorer of pure American humor in cartoon form. It's Clare Briggs, who prior to his death in 1930 was responsible for two of the most popular strips ever drawn, When a Fella Needs a Friend and the famous Mr. and Mrs. full-page Sunday feature. This was Clare Briggs. Miniature golf, a sport that swept the country. In 1928, there were two of these midget courses in America. By 1930, over 25,000. Every available lot became an adult playground. Even the rooftops were converted to courses. Give a man an inch, they used to say, and he'd open one of these diminutive Duffer's Delights. 2 million people played every day somewhere in America. By the way, ever hear why it was called miniature golf? Well, you start, and in a minute you're through. Plop.
Fiercest fire in 10 years in Chicago. It's August 4th, 1932, and flames engulf 22nd and Sangamon streets as half of the Windy City's blaze battling brigades labor to bring them under control. Immediate center of the fire are the Quincy grain elevator and the Omaha meatpacking plant, and early estimates place damage at $6 million. On the scene is yesterday's Newsreels camera, recording the blaze which takes its place among the nation's disasters. Fireboats on the Chicago River fight to prevent spread of the conflagration, and so successful are their efforts that although millions of bushels of wheat are burned, thousands of cattle and tons of meat destroyed, losses are placed eventually at 1/4 the original estimate. 20 acres in one of Chicago's most valuable areas are ravaged, however, before these flames were completely conquered. On-the-spot pictures of the destruction of $1,625,000 worth of produce and property, the 1932 Chicago Fire.
Dawn in Dearborn, Michigan. And historic tried balloon altitude record is to be made by Jeannette and Auguste Piccard. It's October 1934, and Henry Ford is among watchers as the balloon ascends. Auguste Piccard in 1931 had risen to a height of 52,462 feet. In 1932, he set a new record of 10 4/10 miles. But this attempt ended in failure, as the balloon lost buoyancy after rising 10 miles. The Piccards unhurt, the record unbroken.
Winter in 1928 posed no problem to Midwestern women
who took advantage of the newest, for then, fur fashions. Knee-length ermine wraparound trimmed in white fox, lined with silk brocade. Black caracal. They say 5,000 wouldn't buy it. I know one who would. This creation is made of ermine and sable. That also, I understand, is what dreams are made of, too. Code illustrating the new, shorter length for 1928. Back to regal ermine again, with a three-tiered hemline. Monkey fur above the elbow. Fur fashions were great in 28.
Paris in 1922, and the United States sends its entrance for the first women's international track and field meet ever held. Pershing Stadium is the scene, and competing are athletes for 6 nations. Let's watch the 100. There it is. There they go. The high jump. She's over. Okay, your turn, Sally. Whoops. Well, almost. Stick around. You can try it again later. New world's record by Lucille Goddard in the shot put, and by Mademoiselle Savia in the broad jump. American girls are in the lead, though, and... Oh, you again, Sally? Okay, keep trying. I didn't mean right away. She's watching America's Nancy Voorhees win the running broad jump, and we're watching the javelin throw. Great Britain's leading on points. It's up to Sally. But is Sally up to it? No? Then it's England's meet, 50 points to 31.